Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We are your award-winning Tottenham Hotspur podcast and we are back. Oh, yes, we are. We're steering and guiding you through to Aston Villa to come in the Premier League for Tottenham Hotspur as we are just about recovering, well, certainly I am, from that result against Manchester City where I know many thought, am I okay? I am okay. I think people were more concerned how happy they saw me, thinking this guy must live such a miserable life if that is how happy he got after the last 4 or 5 years we've seen him on here. Welcome, one and all, to this show. If you are listening for the first time, where have you been? We're on iTunes, we're on Spotify, we're across all major audio platforms. We're, of course, on X, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook too, and we're joined by returning, special, amazing, brilliant guests to Last Word on Spurs. Joining me, listen, he's been away from the scene for a while. He assures me he's coming back very, very soon. Every time I see him, he's looking better and better and better. And I thought every time I'm on here, I'm looking worse and worse and worse. It's the wonderful Shawnee over at Spurs Talk Show. Sean, loves you have a last word on Spurs. How are you, my man? We're going to get you to unmute from your end.
I'm good, Ricky. Great to be back. Thank you so much again for the invite. It's great to see Simon and Jonny. Listen, I've tried 3 times to come back, and 3 times the comeback has been short-lived. But I assure you, my intentions are to be back at it going forward very, very imminently. But I can't wait to discuss all the things that have happened over the last week and what's to come against Aston Villa on the weekend. But yeah, great to be here, and I hope everyone in the chat is locked in and doing well and healthy and happy and doing the things that they love with those that they love doing them with. Appreciate you, Ricky.
Sean, absolute pleasure. Love to see you on Last Word on Spurs. Also back on the show, and listen, we said it off air, I'm saying it on air. He tells it as it is. He tells it as it is. And on that point, I've got to say, isn't it lovely to be reuniting? I think they call it the debate show, these two. These two are head-to-head on a lot of shows, and now I've got them on together. Aren't I the lucky one? Aren't I the lucky one? The wonderful Jonny H joins us. Jonny, mate, lovely to have you on here. If he's not in the stadium, he's travelling around wherever he is these days, gallivanting. How are you, John?
I'm fine. It's great to be back with Sean, Devil's Advocate.
Devil's Advocate.
Forgive me.
Myself and Sean. Hopefully, we'll be back soon. Everyone asking when it's coming back, so hopefully it won't be long. Listen, I've been like you, Ricky, buzzing, walking down the high street after that game. The atmosphere, walking amongst the fans, everyone was singing, everyone was smiling. It didn't feel like any normal cup win. A league win. This was a huge thing. I've never seen so many people so happy winning a game of football for a long, long time. So it's going to be a good show. It's going to be a good one.
It is. Oh, man, it is going to be a really good show. Also, making up our panel. Do you know what, this is the thing with Tottenham? When you want to bring in positive guests and amazing people on this show, isn't the way that this bloody application that we're on forces us to stop us from doing it? But I can tell you, joining us back on Last Word on Spurs, he's now becoming, I've been told, one of our resident therapists on this show, and they love him for it. The wonderful Simon Yemane is in the house. Simon, we've got you back eventually with the microphone. And can I just say, every time this guy brings his microphone out, I get downgraded in terms of my own version here. How are you, Si? Let me tell you on the show.
I'm wonderful. I had a wonderful week. I don't know what's happening here with the Swedish internet. The Scandinavian Spotify issues here, but I think I'm back for good, and I'm happy to be here.
So, lovely to have you on the show. Thank you so much, like I say, for coming on the show. And look, giving you a round of what's to come on this Last Word on Spurs. Of course, we'll be looking ahead to Aston Villa for Spurs on Sunday. Look, you know the tradition, we don't normally do Friday shows, but the problem I had is I was trying to explain to my missus that if I do this show on a Thursday, number one, half the team, I'm not sure what's happening with them. And number two, been a bit of a family. I say crisis in the house. Kids are unwell. Don't want to bore you with the details, but we're rolling on a Friday. It does mean, I know when I say to the guests normally it's an hour tops, they go, all right, how long will it really be? It will be an hour tops because my marriage is on the line. And I think
he's waiting out in the wings.
She probably is. She's waiting out in the wings. But listen, thank you so much for joining us on this show. We're going to get right into it. Look, you want to know an update of where Spurs are in terms of the injury news? We're going to focus on that where we do go before we start on this show. So let's hand over to Ange Postecoglou, who gives us a quick roundup of the latest injury news ahead of Villa to come on, of course, Sunday.
I guess the main one out of that one is Mickey, and yeah, he has sort of strained a hamstring. It's not too serious, but probably after the international break for him. The other ones are kind of a bit sore. Romero and Werner. But at the moment, still a chance for the weekend, and Sonny's sort of trained today, so if he gets through training tomorrow, should be okay, and I think that's it. Yeah, look, I mean, he was disappointed, obviously. I mean, anytime, and I think, he was really looking forward to the game, so, it was a bit emotional. But yeah, no, look, it's definitely not, sort of knock on wood, a bad one like last time, which kept him out for quite a while. So, he'll work hard, and like I said, good thing is we've got the international break in there. That's an extra 2 weeks for us, so hopefully it means he doesn't miss too much football. Yeah, good draw in terms of, it's a home game, which I think, for all clubs is I guess welcome, because it's not going to be an easy game whoever you're playing. So having it at home is great for us. He said, against a big club in United, so it'll be a really good fixture. But you expect that sort of quarter-final, semi-final stage of any competition. And I mean, I only just heard that Ruben's been appointed, so he'll have his feet firmly under the desk by then, and looking forward to meeting him. Look, I don't think I keep saying this is not, fans are fans. Fans, there isn't a fan around the world that doesn't want their team to always be, playing well. So, what we have to do, as I said, before the game and after the game, is just stay really focused on continuing to evolve into the team we want to be. And at the moment, we, in the league, we've had some disappointing results, but really only one disappointing performance, and that was the Palace game. wasn't a great performance, and we got what we deserved. But what we have to focus on is making sure that we continue to evolve, learn from that. When we have had sort of disappointments, we bounce back straight away, which I think is important. It's part of sort of the evolution of the team. But it's not going to be a smooth ride. But within that, we don't want to have too many times where we're not playing the kind of football we want to. I mean, that's always the benchmark for us. That's our measure, and Palace fell well short of that. Wednesday night was a lot better.
Have you got a beautiful garden at home?
I've got no idea about gardening. I read that somewhere.
On Aston Villa, then, they've gone from almost getting relegated to Champions League football in really such a short period of time. Just how good an appointment was Unai Emery?
Yeah, great appointment. But, it shouldn't surprise anyone. He was an outstanding manager before he got there. He'd done an outstanding job, and probably another sort of cautionary tale about writing people off, because when he was at Arsenal, people were quick to be dismissive of him. Whilst other people's memories faded, I think when you're a manager and you see other managers going through what he did, it's firmly imprinted in your mind, and just goes to show you, like I said, he was an outstanding manager before he got to Villa. I think they identified somebody who could come in and really bring their football club to the levels they want to, and he's done that. Since he's been there, and they continue to get stronger and challenge, and it'll be a good test for us. I mean, our games against them have been really good last year. We obviously won at their place and played really well, but I thought we played well at our place too. But they got on top of us. They obviously got ahead of us for the Champions League spot last year. So it's a great competition for us.
It's his birthday on Sunday. How hopeful are you that you can stop him celebrating with a win?
Miserable day for him, I hope. I guess I'm the oldest in the comp, mate, so I'm not going to mention birthdays. I'll let him go.
Well, there you go. A comprehensive roundup from Ange Postecoglou there on the latest team news. Of course, the magnitude of that victory against Man City, setting up, of course, another Manchester tie for Tottenham in the former Manchester United, of course, in a big quarter-final for the football club. And before we do come on to Villa, and we'll address, obviously, that team news Ange just picked up on, it would be bizarre to not start on what's been a great week for many football fans out there at Spurs that hold cup competitions dear to their heart. John, if you don't mind, I'm going to come to you. You was there. I think when we last spoke on this show, you called yourself a Samaritan survivor on Spurs because of what they've been doing to you over the course of God knows how many years, and the debates you have with Sean, of course, on the old devil's advocate. Just put into words to me, Johnny, how you felt seeing Spurs beat Man City? Because there is that kind of notion about the cup competitions that maybe Spurs haven't always taken them as seriously as they should have. So what was that feeling like when you saw that team selection? We did go strong, and it felt on the night that there was that common goal. Everybody in that stadium, from the players to the coaching staff to the management to the fans, all wanted to win.
Yeah, I think, look, after Fulham last year left a bit of a sour taste in the mouth, and I think Ange, the feedback Ange got from that meant that really in this game, regardless of Pep saying he's going to go with his Manchester City B team, that team that he put out would still be good enough to beat many, many teams, in my opinion. It was, to beat Manchester City. Listen, we have a fantastic record against Manchester City. Their only win at our ground was the 1-0 in the FA Cup last year. But look, there was lots of positives. We had Speedo Werner actually putting the ball in the net, which was fantastic for his confidence. Unfortunately, he had 2 or 3 other chances which he could have done better with. But looking at all the positives there, I think the players really feed off of the crowd. Having gone to the away games where the support is tremendous, but we don't seem to be lifting them. I don't know what it is, if it's psychological or what, but our home games, we are very difficult to beat at home at the moment. And I do think that when we get in a sticky position, like we were in that second half, when that goal went in just before half time, I think a lot of people started to worry. He took off Papa Sarr because he was on a booking, brings on Basuma, and his first tackle he gets a yellow card. So everyone's on tender hooks, and at times it felt like squeaky bum time. But we had lots of chances ourselves, to bury the game. Richie had one, Timo had a couple. I thought it was a very professional performance. And when you consider, we lost Mickey van der Ven and we lost Romero, and we ended up finishing the game with Dragusin and
Davis
at the back.
Yep.
I think hats off to them for delivering. There was a lot of tired legs out there. I think Solanke had run himself ragged. He didn't have any more. And Richarlison came on for a manic 15-minute cameo where he chased every single ball. He reminded me of, when like someone chasing the pigeons out in Trafalgar Square. It was a bit manic, but I think the fans loved it. And the more, when they saw him chasing down, it really did lift the crowd. And if we could replicate that atmosphere, especially at the end, I mean, I don't know if you stayed, or I stayed. I don't know what the TV cameras showed at the end with the crowd dancing and everyone celebrating. It felt like we won a major game. And we haven't had a feeling like that for a long time. Unless you want to include Sheffield United getting 2 goals in Sheffield United at the beginning of last season, where it felt like we just won the cup. No, it was magic. It was a magic moment.
Yeah, I totally agree. Simon, can I just say, mate, whenever I see Simon online, I'm thinking this is a guy that is trying to keep the natives calm, keep them composed, keep them measured. And the feedback I've had from bringing someone on the show so far is that we need this man. I don't want to categorize him in the Lima. I don't want to categorize you someone in the Lima Queens, the Ricky Norwoods, the Darren Harts of this world of Last Word on Spurs guests that we have on that are here to keep those natives calm. I don't want to categorize you, mate, but it's lovely to have you on the show. And I mean, I'll ask the same question to you in terms of the magnitude of that win. It felt like such an important result for Spurs because maintaining their hopes of winning a trophy, there's been that whole narrative around the fact that Andrew's made it very clear he always wins a trophy in his second season, which you could argue he's really put the pressure on himself by doing so. But to back it up with a performance where, again, I've seen outside quarters saying it's a Man City team rotated, but a number of players there, bar Haaland in that team. You're looking at a team that really have got a huge amount of international caps, a lot of experience in there. And it's still a team that Spurs last season, they lost twice to. I know Jonny said once. The reason why Jonny said once is because he couldn't bring himself to say twice because of what the second game would have meant to us if we did go and attempt to win it. So that's why Jonny didn't say twice, I can tell you. Wink, wink. Simon, give me your feelings on that result performance and what that has now set up for Spurs in terms of the feeling around the camp.
Yeah, so to me, that was a huge win. And I have to start out with saying, I love what Jonny said. It was so nice to hear that perspective of how it was, how the feeling was in the stadium. Because I think you really felt that watching the telly, that the crowd was really behind and with the team when they had to struggle through that second half. Like, I thought it was a big win and a huge win in terms of the mentality of this team. And Ricky, you know me, I like to take kind of a big picture view of things. So why I thought this might have been one of our most important wins is because of where we are in this process. I wrote a longer piece on Twitter this week about consistency, and kind of my view of this season is that it's our toughest season yet under Ange. And the reason I think it is because we have a tougher schedule. We're going from 30 games basically. 40 games last season to up to 50 games this season. But competing and trying to challenge in multiple competitions. So we have a tougher schedule, but we also have higher goals, and our expectations as fans are higher. So to me, being able to maintain or placing higher than we did last year, whilst also competing in all these different competitions, makes this a tougher season. And so why this win was important to me was because it came down to something that we have lacked in certain periods of so far in this project, which is that mentality, that way of winning a game that comes down to fighting, to blood, sweat, tears, pain. We saw multiple players getting injured. We saw players running themselves down to the ground. We saw a team who stayed together, who kept playing our way throughout the 96 minutes. And so when I look at consistency, or when I look at this project, we have a couple of key areas that we have to kind of check before we can get to the next level. So the first year was about, to me, point 1 and point 2, which is point 1 is learning the basic principles of the system, individual roles, what's required of every individual player, and just the fundamentals of how Ange wants to play. And within that, there's also a lot of young players, a lot of new players. I think we have 4 or 5 new players in the starting 11 last year. So that's number 1. And number 2 is for those players to learn how to execute every facet of our football. Off the ball, on the ball, playing patterns, pressing patterns, etc. The third thing, which is something that we started to work on last summer, but even more this summer, is having the squad depth and quality to be able to deliver our football effectively over a full season and over a full game. Meaning the way we play requires a certain amount of fitness. And so we need to have depth, we need to have quality to be able to execute every facet of our football. And so this is where we are at. And then we have this new challenge, which is basically, I call it point 4 and point 5, which is a team with experience of dealing with a multitude of challenges as a collective. Like we often talk about this team lacking or needing leadership or maturity or being able to be consistent. And so to me, for a team to be able to reach those things, they have to experience things together as a team. They have to experience different types of tactics, different types of game states. They have to face different types of teams, etc. And they have to experience it together to kind of find out how to solve these problems. And then the fifth thing is players learning how to take personal responsibility of delivering the minimal levels mentally and physically every match. Because you don't need a couple of leaders, you need a team full of leaders holding each other accountable. That's the difference between a good team and a great team, to quote Keane from Manchester United. It's a famous Keane tweet. I love that I put it in there. So some of these things you can kind of buy by going out and buying experienced players and players who are really expensive and who can deliver right away. But we're not going that path. So we need to also get there by coaching, by repeating things, by failing, by succeeding, and doing all those things together. So we kind of building this communal brain as a team. So with all that said, this point of learning and failing and improving together, that's why I think this City game was so important. It was whilst the Crystal Palace game and that second half against Brighton was important, and us seeing something we haven't seen before and getting nervous or not being mentally strong enough and failing and learning from that. This was the other side of that coin, which is learning from doing the right thing and experiencing the fruits of our label. So to me, it was a kind of those milestones in this journey. So a long rant, but hopefully it made sense somewhere.
I think, Simon, you've cut off the next 5 years. I think my job's done here, to be honest with you. In terms of the next 5 years, I'll just come back in 5 years' time. We've got there. But listen, amazing analysis. I can't thank you enough for that, Simon. Like I say, I think that's really interesting points that you make. And bringing you in, Shawnee, I know, like I say, in these last few months, you've been a bit more far removed from it, which you could argue maybe has been the best way to be, because it has been a little bit up and down in terms of the consistency level. And I think we all sit here and say we'd love to try and, I think there's been one thing I will say this season that I think 100% we have seen, in my opinion, definite improvement in terms of the patterns of play with Spurs when you're looking at the fixtures in comparison to last season. I think the performances have been there. The results haven't been there. But in terms of the metrics, if you look at the goals conceded, they've come right down. If you look at goals conceded from set pieces, I think, we've faced 56 corners so far. We've only conceded off one, courtesy Jason McGovern, bless his heart. But I think that's the key. There's a number of metrics out there that are showing you this team are improving. But the element is that if we don't put the ball in the back of the net, none of that matters, because all we know about football is it is a results-driven business, and you are judged focusly and solely on results. So on these points, Sean, if I can get my words out here, how important was that City win to kind of get everybody very much believing in this team? And I think the key is that we do know with this young side, there will be inconsistent days ahead, but I think we should make no excuse for the lack of effort or application. That's got to be there every single week, Sean, like we just saw in the City game. Is that fair?
Yeah, it is absolutely fair. And I just want to compliment both Simon and Johnny's analysis there. I thought both of them made some brilliant points. Nothing I could really disagree with, and sort of very few new things I can add to the mix, apart from to kind of agree with what you're saying, Ricky, that whilst everything looks good in the moment, first, let me sort of just take a step back. I'm really glad that Jonny informed me, because I wasn't aware that the reaction after the game in the stadium, in the streets, was as celebratory as it sounds like it was. At the time, I was watching the game, but dealing with other things. And then when I finally got round to looking at some reaction content on various channels, I'll be honest, the sort of, maybe I picked the wrong channels to look at, but the vibe was more, it was, okay, good win, but it was against the B team, or good win, but this player's still not good enough, or Ange is still naive. And it was kind of focusing on some of the indiscretions that some people have regarding the situation that we have at Tottenham. And I was surprised by the overarching tone that I saw. So I'm relieved to hear that the vast majority of people were taking it on face value as something to celebrate. And because that's how I saw it, and I think that we were the better team on the night against, people say it's a B team against Manchester City, but their B team is better than 90% of the A teams around world football, and a similarity between Tottenham and Manchester City that I think should also shouldn't go understated. Simon mentioned it, is I think the leveling up of our B team, if you like, or our squad. I don't think there's ever been as little a difference between our first 11 and those that are on the bench and coming through as I'm seeing right now. And I think that's a brilliant thing, because when, as Simon said, we are, almost adding 40% more fixtures, or 30% more fixtures to our to our calendar and the injuries that inevitably will come, it's important that we do have a shallow drop off when those guys come in, and when they do, hopefully they can take their chance and make a stake a claim. Players like Radu Dragusin's going to have a couple of weeks here and a few games at least to be able to, let the world know how good he is, and maybe make it difficult for Romero on his return, etc. So there's lots of things to come that are going to sort of, I think, see where we're at. In isolation, the game against Manchester City, I think, highlighted to me the reasons why everybody should stick to the plan and recognize the reality of the situation with Ange Ball. And I think that there is a couple, mostly positives, but I think just in the interest of balance, I will at least offer a concern that I have with regards Ange Ball that was demonstrated a little bit, at least on Wednesday night. First and foremost, you have to ask the question, are the players good enough in this squad to be able to utilize Ange Ball for what it's worth and take on the best and have success? And I think we've seen in isolation and in moments in halves of football and in certain games that when they're on it, that the team are good enough, the players are good enough, the squad is capable. Is the system, the formation, capable of doing what everyone wants, which is to play attractive football and yield good results against the best? And I think we've seen enough evidence that at times it is more than capable of doing that. And therefore, the players aren't the problem en masse. The managers isn't the problem en masse. The formation isn't necessarily the problem en masse. Every system, whichever one that you implement, it doesn't matter whether you're playing counter-attack, park the bus, every system will have some positives that you can take from it and some drawbacks. There's sacrifices that you have to bake into any philosophy. This one happens to be one that includes vulnerabilities in counter-attack and vulnerabilities that you're going to concede chances. It's just the way it is. You can't have 14 players on the pitch. And so I think that the difference between where we are in the league, at least, and where we want to be is not around major changes in anything other than kind of an intangible list of mentality-based things like confidence of certain players. And it's wonderful to see players like Timo Werner not only get his goal, a great finish, but then have the confidence to take on 2 or 3 more. And hopefully that can kickstart his resurgence into a player that he has been in the past. And look, he has everything within his wheelhouse to be a top player if he could just finish the final part of his game. And that's something that I think confidence is a massive thing, an intangible thing that he has to figure out. I think you also need obviously more consistency from the rest of the team, which, you can't switch off for 45 minutes. If you put in the first half like you did against Brighton, you can't switch off for the second half. Everything is undone. So consistency in that regard. And also I think that the biggest and most important factor that this system demands, especially given that Ange kind of hands over the poetic license of how the system looks to the players for the most part. He says, stick to the framework, but how that looks, you guys have the freedom to move into whichever area you want, etc. And the consequences of allowing 11 players to have that freedom is that you have to rely on each other's wavelength. You have to be able to kind of predict what each of you are going to do and try and predict and be on the right side of that thought process more times than you're on the wrong side. And when it goes wrong, if you misread a pass, then you're countered against, and that's how bad things can happen. But if it goes right, then it can create wonderful football that also yields results. The only area, so all these things are positive, and I think all these things will get better with time. The only kind of letter, the C letters that I think that maybe there is unnecessary vulnerabilities to this system that doesn't have to be there is the context that I think is missing at certain times of game management. Like when you're 2-0 up with 43 minutes on the clock and 4 minutes of injury time to play in the first half, and you're under the cosh anyway. There's no need to maintain win the ball back and pass it around the back and try to create another scoring opportunity. There's no need for that. And I just worry a tiny bit. This is not a criticism of Ange, but I think it's a consequence of the fact that he believes in his system so much, because everywhere he's gone, it has yielded results and success. But I do think that maybe that Ange Ball idea is somewhat attached to the ego of the man. And because it is framed around never looking back, never sitting back, always moving forward, I think sometimes if you could take Ange Ball and just remove the element of that philosophy that has his ego in it and replace it with context and in-game management and recognizing that there's no need to do what you're doing in the 44th minute of the game, I think then we could have something that will the success of which will be expedited. And that's the only real concern I have, is the need to constantly move forward. It's not a plan B. It's not a lack of a plan B. It's just an adaptation of plan A, just to bake in a little bit more context. And then I think we can do wonderful things.
That's fair. That's fair.
Can I just add to this, Ricky? I just want to say that, you know, I've been critical of Ange. You know, people who know me, you know, will say I want him to succeed, but I have at the same time been critical. And I've got to give credit where credit's due, because, you know, in that game against Manchester City, we played a different game. We only had something like 35% possession. And, you know, we played on the counter. And this season, we have scored, on the other Wednesday night was our 8th goal that we've scored from a fast counter attack. We've scored 7 in the league from a fast counter attack. I think 3 from Sonny and 3 from Brennan Johnson. And last season, the whole of last season, we managed to do that 3 times. 3 times in the whole of the season. This season, we've managed to do it 8 times. We saw what a fantastic break that was, with Archie Gray set the ball off. Lovely touch, back heel from Brennan Johnson, which set Kulu off, and that lovely bent ball into the path of Timo to bury it. And our best ever counter-attacking in the Premier League has been 9 under Pochettino back in 2019. So that is a definitely shift in how we're playing. And second of all, you know, if you look at Montgomery, the work Montgomery's done, you know, we've been speaking about how well we've been doing defending corners. I've been a little bit disappointed at the West Ham game, for example. We had 12 corners in that first half, and we never looked like scoring with any of them. They've obviously been working on it, because I noticed a couple of things were a little bit different. Look at the short corners. And I was pleased to see that the short corner from Kulu that led to Basuma, setting up Basuma to hit that fantastic shot that he bent from outside of the post in. So there are tweaks that might not be apparent on first sight, but when you delve a little bit deeper, there are subtle changes.
There's definitely adaptation. 100% there's adaptations from last season. There's a lot more broader kind of width in the fullbacks. There's not necessarily the need for them to come inside quite as frequently, and that license is there. I'm not talking about pivoting to a plan B. I'm saying plan A as it is, with the freedom to do what they want. I'm fine. I love it. I'm on board with it. I'll take the bitter with the better in terms of the vulnerabilities, but just the need to maintain it regardless of the in-game scenario, that kind of forward-thinking momentum. If you could just bake in the context a tiny bit and allow that freedom to be to also include restraint, I think that we could leave ourselves in less dangerous positions sometimes in games.
That's fair. I think on this point, Simon, I mean, you've been an advocate, as we've said, about the fact that this is going to take time. It's not going to happen overnight. You know, we were out a very nice thread before the game against City, that it's a process. And I saw you had your hand up there. We're trying to come around to you, I think, when Sean mentioned about Werner. Come in and tell us what you were going to make about that point.
Yeah, I think both these guys are putting up real interesting and fascinating and pertinent examples around things that I think is both a weakness and I think I have an answer about where we might see more of that. I get exactly what you're saying, Sean. Not a plan B, but pragmatism or being contextual, seeing what's happening, you know, adjusting to game state or whatever. So I think sometimes we forget stuff like all those games where he put Højbjerg in, or when he made that switch from Maddison to Sarr. That's examples of where I think you can see him making adjustments that are contextual. But I understand what you're saying about doing more of that and being more quicker with subs and being more alert when it needs to adjust to what's happening on the pitch. Just going back a little bit to what I said earlier about, you know, this checking off these different areas of basically how to build this rebuild. And I think I hope we're going to see more of those kind of in-game adjustments, because I think the first season was a lot about, just teaching this team what we're about. And some of that came from being stubborn and consistent in the principle of how we play. So whatever happened, he kept saying, play this way, keep trying to score, because that's fundamental to how we play. But I'm hoping, and I think we're going to see more of what we've seen this season, which is tactical adjustments, tactical tweaks, depending on who we meet, who we're facing that week, tactical in-game adjustments, where he does exactly what you're talking about. And that takes me to what I kind of think is more of an issue, which is something Jonny touched on, which is an example of that is making the most out of our chances. And Sean mentions this too, which is this system, when you look at this game against City, if you look at the second half, we couldn't have won this game 4-1 or 5-1.
Yep, spot on.
We had 3 really big chances that we didn't execute on. And so if we took those chances, that would mean that we won a game against a strong City side 4 or 5-1. That could easily have been the result. That takes me to what I think is more of an issue that we have right now, which I think is something where Sean is right to point out, which is we don't know if we are actually done with the quality of this squad. Because the last part of leveling up is having players that could execute. And because if you look at all our stats, we score a lot, we create a lot of chances, but the consistent thing that we are not that we're not really reaching our what's the name? We're not reaching our
Optimum
ceiling.
level. Optimum level.
Optimal level is in scoring goals.
Mm.
We can score a lot more goals, which
Yep.
would change game state, which is this thing of being consistent in executing what the fundamental part of this system is built on, which is score more goals and basically kill the opposition. So, and corners is a big part of that. I agree totally with Jonny. If we look at our corner stats, we've taken the most corner by far in the league. I think it's us and City at 76 corners.
Top two. Yep.
The next, third and fourth are around 50 corners.
Yep.
And Arsenal have scored more goals than us. Bournemouth, all those teams have scored more on our corners than we had. So that's another part of us not making the most of our of what we could do with our system. Because the system is based on scoring a lot of goals, and if you don't do that, you put yourself at risk in a way that the system is not built for. So, because when you look at our defensive stats, we've conceded 1 defensive corner, we've conceded 1 goal on counters. So, as Ricky pointed out earlier, we're improving in so many ways. When you look at all different facets of our team, we have better press, we have better defense, we have a stronger midfield, but that last thing that we're missing is scoring more goals.
Oh, man. Listen, I think lovely words there in terms of the system itself. What we are going to do, strike up your bingo cards. We are going to go for our first break of the show. We are conscious of time. And I say in that break, you're going to hear from a preview of Aston Villa, Villa of the Lane, I think they're called, Villa Park podcast. They're going to give us their views ahead of Villa to come on Sunday. They do come thick and fast with Tottenham, they do. And actually, just to be very, very clear, on this show, we're joined by the wonderful Sean over the Spurs Talk Show. Is back. He's being harassed in terms of when is he coming back. He's coming back soon on your screens. I don't want to give it away. We'll let the man give you the big crescendo when he's back. Also alongside him, I'm joined by reunited him alongside Devil's Advocate panelist Jonny is in the house as he is here. Like I say, they're not together. They're not. Even though Jonny looks like he was going to try and hand that to Sean there through the screen. And also back up our panel. He's become I don't think he wants to know. Listen, I don't think he wants to become a resident therapist, but he's been joined that category. Lee McQueen, Darren Hartman, Ricky Norwood, eat your heart out. I don't want to join you guys. Simon Yemane is on the show. Always love for Simon. And like I say, this show, we always try and find that balance. And look, I think these guys are great. They're superb. So we're going to steer you into Aston Villa to come on Sunday. Big game for Spurs in terms of the Premier League. We know, of course, our form I think it's fair to say we use that word inconsistent. It's fair, but I think as we said at the start of the show and throughout, actually, that with Tottenham, in terms of performances, they've been there. They just haven't scored enough goals. And bar, like I said, that really disappointing, of course, second half against Brighton, that really poor performance against Palace. Overall, Spurs have been better in the Premier League for sure. There's no doubt about that. Andrew's actually asked about the highs and lows as the squad evolves, and as fans, do we need to understand that more? And I think it's an important point Ange brought in actually in his presser where he said, look, I keep saying this, fans are fans. There isn't a fan in the world who doesn't want their teams to be playing well. What we have to do before the game and after the game is stay really focused on continuing to involve in the team of where we want to be. I feel like I'm talking like Simon here. This is what Ange actually said. He said, this is the benchmark for us. That is our measure. Palace, we fell well short of that. Wednesday was a lot better in terms of that Man City win. And Ange was also asked about the fact 8 wins out of 10. Do you deserve more credit? And he simply said, look, you get what you deserve. So I probably deserve whatever I'm getting. I think it's fair enough depending on your outlook. Now, look, of course, the big news ahead of the game, we shared you Andy's presser. Of course, Mickey van der Ven looking likely now that will not now see Mickey until after the next international break as things stands, according to Ange Postecoglou. Wilson Odobert, I think Wilson, again, looks like he's going to be out for a sustained period and did refer in his presser to say that it's going to be longer than initially the time frame was, which I think was led to believe around 9 to 12 weeks. So I think naturally now we're not going to see Wilson back in a Spurs shirt until the new year. The good news is Sonny has trained. And of course, if there is no hiccups, you would imagine Sonny will be back in the matchday squad for this upcoming game against Aston Villa. Now, when I said this point, in terms of other forums and stuff, I've been shouted down for being negative. I don't think I'm being negative when I say this. Aston Villa on Sunday, they're a side that have been unbeaten in the last 2 months away in the Premier League. They've made their best ever start to a Premier League season. They are going to be hurting for sure on the back of a cup exit against Crystal Palace, where, Jonny, on this point, you know, everyone talks about Tottenham's trophy stigma. Villa have been longer than us waiting for a trophy. So I do worry that the exertions of Wednesday night, coupled by the fact that we have got some doubts, of course, as we know, over the likes of Werner and over the likes of Romero as well, who Ange did comment and say it will be a late decision on those guys. Whilst there's a great feel-good factor on the back of Wednesday's game and the home form has been better, how important is it for you that we do follow up the game against Villa with a win? And I just want to get on this point because maybe I'm going crazy. I don't want there to be like a kind of crazy head loss if we don't get the right result, because there are a lot of mitigating factors working against us. Is that fair if I say that?
Yeah, I mean, listen, look, I think if you hear it's got fireworks going off over there.
We haven't won a trophy just yet, by the way.
No,
just to be clear.
no.
Not just yet.
A bit premature.
God, I mean, after a City when we got fireworks, imagine if we actually go and win bloody something.
Look, I think this is a much tougher game than the City game. I know that sounds crazy, but I really do. And that was before, you know, we knew that, you know, the injuries that, you know, we're coming into. They rested Ollie Watkins in the week, so he will be missing. Morgan Rogers was rested quite a few players. I don't think their priority is the Carabao Cup. They've made a fantastic start in the Champions League, unbeaten, top of the table, beaten Bayern Munich. They've started the season really, really well with some very impressive performances. And, you know, I think for me, one of the most important areas of this game is going to be the midfield. And I hate to say it, but for me, you've got to play a double pivot with Kulu and either Bentancur and Papa or Bentancur and Basuma to add some physicality into that midfield if we're going to deal with them. You know, am I singling out James Maddison? I don't feel that the 2-8s really work at the moment in the middle of the park. With certain teams, you just can't do it. And I think, you know, lots of questions are going to be asked of this team. Obviously, at the back, you know, we're going to have Dragusin playing out position on the left-hand side. Really feel it's a massive mistake that we didn't sign a left centre-back, another backup left-back. We all said it in the summer. Sean and I were discussing it. But hopefully, Dragusin, you know, he's grabbed the opportunity with both hands. And he's playing with Romero because let's be honest, Dragusin and Ben Davis playing against Duran and Ollie Watkins and the pace of Bailey and co. It's going to ask a lot of questions. That's why I feel that the midfield is crucial to us to have some strength to it. I mean, last season we really should have won that game, and we had Lo Celso's fantastic goal. Kula missed an open goal. We really shouldn't have lost that game last year. But we put out. I think I put out a stronger team. I might be mistaken, but I think we put out a stronger team than we're going to put out this week. What are we going to do on the left-hand side? I was absolutely staggered to watch Timo Werner actually have to walk off the pitch and round the pitch, holding his leg on his own. I mean, I've typical Spurs. Where was the medical team? Too busy? I'm not quite sure. I mean, there he was, and just walk off the side of the
cold night, John. Cold night.
Stadium on your own. Don't worry about it. It'll only aggravate the groin strain or whatever.
Was that just to get the ovation? Do you think, though, John? Was that just to get the ovation?
I was struggling. He was struggling to get off. He should have been going off in the other direction. But so who's going to go on that left side? We got no Odegaard. We've got no. I don't know if Timo's going to play. So I'm not sure whether is he going to go with Richie on that left hand side? It's possible. Quite alarming, I've got to be honest with you, was the sight of Brennan Johnson after 54 minutes, doubled over, absolutely knackered. Tried to get on one of Timo's crosses. I do worry sometimes. Last season against Wolves away, he looked absolutely exhausted around about the same time. And I thought, 22 years of age, you're a professional footballer, you should have a better engine. But he has played a lot of football.
He has already.
He's played a lot of football.
Yep.
And
yep.
I don't know whether it was catching up with him, but he desperately needed to come off on the weekend. So I'm a little bit worried about the flanks. I don't want to see us push Kulu out onto that right-hand side to accommodate Maddison in between, the double pivot we were talking about before. But it's a tough game. It's a really tough game. They're a very, very good team. I mean, their only defeat, I think, this season was Arsenal. I think was their only defeat.
That's right. Yep.
And I've watched them in the Champions League, and they've looked very, very impressive. I've always been a massive fan of Unai Emery, and I thought he got a really hard time at Arsenal, undeserved. Listen, I would be really happy. I've got to be honest with you. I would be happy with a draw. Obviously, I want to win. But I think it's going to be a really tough ask for us on the weekend. And hopefully the belief of the players after beating Man City and the crowd can replicate what we delivered on the weekend and lift this team to get the result that we really, really all want.
Yeah, man. I totally agree with that on that, Johnny. I think, again, going into the game, look, Spurs are at home. I think we've had a really good home record this season, bar the Arsenal result. That I think on this point, bringing you in, Sean, is the element of it. We are facing a very good Aston Villa side, as we've said. This is not to go overboard about them, but I mean, look, in terms of what the opportunity is, there's already a 5-point gap there between ourselves and fourth place Aston Villa. So many would actually say, whilst I agree with Johnny, that maybe, you'd say a draw is a good result under the circumstances. If Spurs have got ambitions of wanting to be in and around the Champions League places, and I know Ange Postecoglou won't have any of it about, a top 4 finish. He wants to win everything. He wants to win it all, he told us earlier in his press conference. How important is it that they do pick up maximum points here, Sean, in your opinion, given that gap is already at 5 points between the respective clubs?
Yeah, it's crucial. 10 points from away from the top already, 5 points from Villa. I think this season, a lot of the teams that maybe Tottenham fans were looking at and hoping that they would, not have the resurgence and not improve from last year. Teams like Chelsea, they look better. Brighton look better. Villa certainly look like a really well-run team, a well-run club. I think you mentioned earlier, Ricky, about or maybe it was Johnny, about the fact they've had to sell some players as well, but they've replaced them well. It seems like everything is moving in the right direction. If you're a Villa fan right now, then you're a very happy guy. However, what I would say is, the concern that I have is more around whether Tottenham, the players, will consider this and lift themselves for the game as to be
Spot on.
sort of
Totally
treated
agree.
as
Spot
higher
on.
caliber
Spot on.
as it really is. You know, against Man City, against Arsenal, against Liverpool, against Chelsea, whatever. Tottenham fans, the team, everybody appreciates the size and the magnitude of the fixture. And I'm not sure if Aston Villa get the credit that they deserve just yet from teams for where they are and where they're going. What I would say, though, is that Tottenham do have a very good track record against Aston Villa. And I think that styles makes fights in boxing. And I think that this particular game, styles makes a really good match against Aston Villa. Jonny, you alluded to the idea of going toe-to-toe in midfield. You know, I think that there's very few midfielders that, you know, or midfield trios that could compete with Aston Villa on a physical threat. They are incredibly strong, agile, in Amadou Onana, John McGuinness. They're big, strong, physical players that are not afraid to get stuck in. So if you're going to sacrifice the quality, the technical quality, to try to match them physically, I think you're going to lose anyway. I would rather have 3 players in the midfield that Ange is more confident that are going to get on with the physical battle, regardless of the fact that it's going to be a tough day for them in that regard, and try to outplay them. Because for me, I think that Tottenham are going to need the technicalities, the speed of foot, the kind of the clever thinking that can sort of pass the ball around Aston Villa's midfield. When we have the possession, I expect us to have more possession against Villa again, like we usually do. But I think it's going to be a fascinating match. And after the sort of come down, if you like, after beating Manchester City, you saw how much it meant to the players. Jonny, you're telling me, I'm so glad to hear it, how much it meant to the fans afterwards. Is Aston Villa going to be treated as big of a fixture as it should be? I'm not sure. And that's the only real concern that I have, because if I think we take it that seriously, then I think we have enough about us to be able to beat this team. And I think that, you know, in terms of talent, I think that we have it. I think they have maybe better balance to their squad at the moment. Obviously, losing Van de Ven is going to be it's going to be interesting to see how we, you know, how we can adapt to that, and whether that lack of pace, that lack of get out of jail free card that we've come to expect from him is going to be a big hindrance. But like I say, out of adversity comes opportunity. Radu Dragusin, at least indirectly through his agent, has been very vocal about the kind of ambitions that he has, the confidence that they have in him as a player.
Yeah.
And, you know, this is his chance to step up and to ultimately stake a claim for not just to be a good fill-in, but to obviously try to claim his place in the first team out of right. And he's going to have a tough day against the forwards of Aston Villa. But for me, like I say, I think that Tottenham have a better record against Villa or this version of Villa than a lot of teams do. I think it comes down to the team selection. I personally, Jonny, just... You know,
I was going to ask you, Sean, are you saying, so that just for clarity here, because I'm saying I agree with what you're saying there in the midfield. I was just saying that I would rather have 2 physical players along with the creative, rather than playing with 2 8s in Kulu and Maddison, which is what I saw against Palace, where we just got destroyed. Now, I think personally, there's no comparison between the strength of the Crystal Palace midfield and what's going to be available against Aston Villa on the weekend there. So that's why I was. So would you push Kulu out wide and play Maddison in the middle of a stronger 2?
No, I think that if you're looking for a strong, I think the strongest player in our midfield is Kulusevski.
Yeah.
So for me, I think you bring him in. I think you bring Basuma in, but I think you need to outplay them. I think you need the creative. I think you need the speed of footwork to be able to pass the ball around them. Because if you're trying to take them on in a dogfight, then they'll drag you down to their level and they'll beat you on experience. I think that you know, I'm not dismissing Aston Villa's technicalities. They are a good footballing team, but in terms of strength, it's chalk and cheese. So I don't think we should necessarily focus on trying to compete in that regard. I think we do as best we can, but the team selection should be around playing our version of ourselves. And like I said in my first answer from the previous question, I think when you look at it, are we capable of playing Ange ball with the squad that we have? Yes. Is Ange ball, when it's at its best, capable of beating anybody, especially at home? The answer is yes. So we have to pick the team that suits the outcome. And for me, I don't think we should be lessening the technicality of the squad in order to compete on a physicality basis. I think we should be going for the team that Ange believes can present the best version of Ange ball, and that would include James Maddison for me.
Got to bring Simon in. Simon, you talk a lot about, again, the process and where we are in this journey. And I think, again, the thing is that we're all seeing, Simon, as we've touched upon, is that there has been better patterns of play, performances when you look at overall the comparison to last season in the respective fixtures. Again, I'll caveat this, bar the 20 minutes of Brighton and bar, of course, the game against Palace. When you're looking at this game, someone on the weekend, where do you feel someone will be won and lost? Do you agree with the guys here that it will be midfield, or do you look at the forward areas with Villa? To be fair, I think Duran has been formidable really this season for Villa. I mean,
Yeah.
there was talk of course, at the start of the season that he might leave the club for West Ham. And again, when you've got him and Watkins in your team, in your squad, I mean, it's unbelievable to have two strikers that know where the back of the net is, and they look, if I'm going to be honest with you, looking at them both, they're 20-plus goal a season strikers. So what's your kind of take on where the game will be won and lost for you, Simon, at the weekend?
I mean, Crystal Palace to me was one of those games, just going, not to continuously point back to my initial statement about process and consistency, but it was an away game, and Glasner threw something at us that we hadn't seen, I think, ever, in a combination of things that we haven't seen as a team. First, it was the back five, and then it was a mid-block, and then it was a really aggressive man-to-man press. And so whilst we made that change at halftime against West Ham, where we took Maddison out and put Sarri in, and that unlocked us, to me, that had to do with us being outmatched physically against a really physical midfield. So our issues in that game was about off-ball issues. Against Crystal Palace, I think our issues came from on-ball, which has to do with Crystal Palace basically putting something out against us that we couldn't solve for. I think, in some extent, and this might sound trivial or silly, I think we looked rusty on the ball. I think we look like a team that aren't used to teams pressing us really aggressively, because teams are so afraid of doing that from last season that we kind of look like we didn't have our patterns on lock. So I think we were outmatched both physically, but especially on the ball. We made a lot of sloppy passes on the ball. We couldn't build out from the back the way that's usually one of our strengths. So that was one issue. And then we saw against City that they kind of implemented the same thing, and they usually press really aggressively, but they went really aggressively with their press, and they played us man to man. But this time we were ready for it, and we took advantage, and that's how we scored that first goal on the counter. So to me, what becomes interesting is, because we know Arteta, we know Emery is he's the type of coach that's really tactically flexible, and he's really good at adjusting his team. That's the strength of this Aston Villa team. They can play on the ball, they can press high, they can sit in the mid block, they can counter. There's so many ways they can play direct through Torres, playing a ball in behind. So to me, what kind of team we put out has to do with what we kind of think they are going to do. And so I'm really fascinated about how I think Emery is going to play. So, because when I look at Aston Villa in this game, I agree with Jonny. I think this is probably one of our toughest games this season. I don't know if it's tougher than City. I think it's different, but I think it's one of the toughest. For one reason, and Jonny touched on this, he rested a lot of players midweek. He rested 10 players out of their usual starting 11. I think McGinn was the only player who played. Everyone else were rested. I also think they have 0 injuries in their pretty deep squad. So
you're right. They've got a fully fit bill of health going into this game.
Yeah. Meanwhile, we played City with basically our starting 11, and we lost one of, if not our best defender in Van der Ven. I mean, the positives, and this kind of goes to something Sean addressed about what kind of team we're going to see. We play at home, and one of the ways we've been strong this season is at home. I think, and again, this goes back to this mentality thing. We struggle when we play away from home, and we are a bit better when this young team is supported by our home crowd. They kind of need that little extra push to kind of really perform our best. So that's a positive. Aston Villa, we're not great against Bournemouth. I watched that game, and they lost against CP. So their record is a bit so and so right now. I don't know if that's a weakness. Basically, it could be a strength too. They might come to Spurs try to prove something. I mean, we coming off a big win, and that's going to bring confidence to this team. So that's 3 positives. The questions I have is about, will we be able, because Emery's going to throw a screwball. What's that name in baseball?
Curveball.
Curveball.
Could be a curveball. Could be a curveball.
Screwball. He's gonna throw some shenanigans our way, and the question is going to be, will we have the right lineup? Will Ange be ready for it? And will we be able to deal with whatever they put our way? And while I think Aston Villa's had a better start to their season, they also had a much easier schedule, in my opinion. They only really played Arsenal out of the best teams in the league, and we played Newcastle, Arsenal, Brighton. So I think while they have put up a lot of points, I don't know if they're as unbeatable as you might feel just looking at their point tally. So I'm not as high as on Aston Villa as a lot of other people are. I do think their biggest strength is their consistency. So we know they're going to play a good game, but I don't know I don't think they're unbeatable, and I definitely think if we are up for it and we put the right team out, I definitely think this is one we probably can and maybe should win.
It's interesting. I mean, I see a lot of comments saying that it's a game that we must not lose, given already that gap between the 2 respective clubs. And I think, again, you're looking at crucial parts of the season. Again, I think if you're looking at, obviously, the reverse to this of last season and where we were at the same time, we had that difficult period after, I think, match day 10, where we went and lost, of course. We had, I think, Wolves and with defeats to Aston Villa. And I think Spurs can't afford to allow that situation to repeat itself again. If we are going to have a really good second season under Ange, I think it's always the kind of critical point where you look at the opening 10, and then after that, I think November and December, January, I feel that kind of period almost sets the season. So you've really got to, I think, try and pick up results during this period. Yes, it is tough for the players, again, to lose Mickey van der Ven for what looks like a couple of weeks, hopefully nothing more than that. But again, what you are relying on now with the likes of Dragoshin to come in, put a display in. I mean, to be fair, I think the great point I think you mentioned, Simon, it might have been Sean actually, is that there's not that significant drop-off like there was last season. With no disrespect, when you're bringing the likes of Eric Dyer, Davinson Sanchez in now, I just feel there's an element, I know Johnny's trying to keep a straight face, there's an element of trust with Dragoshin. Watch him go and get a red card now on Sunday, I've said that. But
it is the close, like there hasn't been as big a drop-off.
No.
A smaller drop-off rather from our sort of technical A's to our technical B's in my lifetime, I don't think, and for that to have changed so drastically in the 18 months or whatever it is that Andrew's been here, that shouldn't be understated how much work has been going on in the background as well. It's very, very important.
I mean, I think I can't say that. I think we're much, I think we're much more consistent in what type of football we put out. But the inconsistency comes more mentally when we see stuff we're not used to, or we play somewhere we're not used to, and stuff like that. So that's the next part.
But that comes with age, right? So like I was saying earlier, it's the kind of intangible areas that we need to improve on: consistency and the confidence of each player, and then the understand the wavelength things. All of that stuff is much more difficult to achieve when you're 18 to 21 than it is when you're sort of 29 to 30. There's benefits of youth, but there's also drawbacks, and we have put together an incredibly young squad who are very capable. So I have full confidence that as time moves on, sort of short term.
I think we have the second youngest team.
Well, I was just going to say, Simon, I love the narrative on Sky. After the game, they're going, "Oh yes, the kids, the Manchester City kids really performed well. They were up against it." Well, hello a minute, hang on. The average age of the Manchester City team was 26, and ours was 23.
Yeah.
How about focusing on the 3-year average age difference? On our kids and how young our squad was. Yeah. Because we had a lot of kids in ours, but the narrative will always be something different.
Well, that's fine. That's okay.
Got to create your own narrative.
Who cares about if the narrative in the footballing world is to afford Manchester City yet more plaudits.
Yeah.
And let us fly under the radar. But when you
Correct.
look at our youth, you look at the talent that's in the actual youth squad, the players that have already been promoted. As I say, in my opinion, all that we are missing from turning great football into success is to work on intangibles and work on mentality. That stuff is, a lot of it is solved with experience, and a lot of it is just takes a little bit of time. Now, that's not going to help the impatient people that want and demand things now. But when you look at the bigger picture, and Simon, you talked about 10,000 foot views zooming out. I think when you look at Tottenham's position right now, I think it's very exciting and very much a work in progress that can only get better as these players have time to learn and gel and work out how to read each other.
My line is like, we're young, and when I say young, I don't only mean we're a young team when you look at individual players' ages, but we're also a young team, as in these players have only been together 15 months or in some cases 3 months. So like if you look at Solanke, who's all of a sudden, crucial to how we play, he's been here for 8 games. So you have to put it in that context all the time. Like, it's so hard to remember that when we're so obsessed with this team. And
of course,
growing, just to say, when you were talking about growing, I mean, if you look just quickly here, you look at someone like Archie Gray, who at the beginning of the game, Mateus Nunes was giving him a really torrid time down that flank, and yet as the game went on, he didn't let it get to him, and he
came back really well.
And he got stronger and stronger as the game went on. And for an 18-year-old, in a game like this, when they brought on the players, I thought it was an outstanding performance. Yes, it didn't, it wasn't Benton Core, who for me was my man of the match. I thought it was unbelievable in the middle of the park. But, it's those little games and cameos and the progression that you see from these young players that gives us hope that when they do play in their correct position, they're only going to learn and get stronger from it all.
And Jonny, I just want to add, like, that's what I think Ange is doing when he keeps talking about trophy in his second season. I actually think he doesn't really care how people externally view it. He's putting pressure on this team because he touched on this today in the presser. He wants the team to experience how it is to play under pressure, because a team that's supposed to win year after year, they have to live with that criticism, that pressure. Him telling them that I expect almost, or we're aiming for a trophy, or is such a good learning experience, even if they fail at doing it.
Not just that, Simon, right? And Ricky, I know we're over the hour, so I know you're probably wrapping up. But the last thing I want to say,
as long as I'm not blamed for it, I'm the one trying to keep. I'm the one who's normally extended it. I'm the guest. We're trying to keep it down.
I'll take it.
Background.
The one with the hammer in the background.
You should have one of those.
It's he's going into a Scream movie.
Yeah.
Go on, Shirley, carry on.
Yeah, the only thing I want to add just to that this sort of the trend of this last part of the conversation. It once again demonstrates why I think versatility as being such a key ingredient of what is the Tottenham player ID profile mandate right now is so valuable. Right? Not only because obviously you have a player that can fill in certain positions when other injuries happen, but you're looking. I think that versatility and adaptability is a tangible physical representation of something that Ange looks for in the players that he wants to work with, which is that willingness to do more than what you have necessarily grown up learning about in the position that you focused on. A right back in Ange ball does more than a right back does in the other 19 positions and 19 teams in the Premier League. Same with central midfielders, same with forwards. You look at Dominic Solanke, the work he does when he comes back. Some people are judging him already on his goals, but actually his work rate, his off the ball stuff. Timo Werner gets so much, I think, unnecessary criticism because people overlook the things that he does. His ability to press, that pace that he has is unplayable. His ability to sprint with the ball, or at least not slow down drastically when he catches up with the ball, it gives the opposition something to think about. If he could figure out the last piece of the puzzle, his finishing, he would be in the top, one of the top players in the world. There's so many benefits to versatility, and especially at such a young age, that I think it only bodes well for Tottenham. And this player ID, where versatility is a key sort of component of it, I think it manifests itself in positives in so many ways that are not necessarily evident when you just look at the player and you just judge them on individual performances.
I thought it was so interesting because he played against Nunes playing on the wing, and I watched that and I was like, I watched that City game and how Pep set that team up, and it's exactly what Ange wants to do. It's like Nunes playing on the wing, Silva can play in the midfield or the wing, and the way they play is so reminiscent when it comes to just the principles of having players taking responsibility. That's why he always talks about character and responsibility. And when I talked about that, players learning, like, okay, if I went into this game with this amount of level of energy or focus or whatever, and we failed, that means that next time when I experience this, I need to take more responsibility. I need to be able to not think that Son is going to bail me out or this other player is going to do what I need to do. So even when I look at Johnson, knowing his character and knowing him failing at covering that back post, it's so frustrating, but I know that he's going to kill himself and learn that that's his responsibility. He needs to do better when it comes to that. And certain players won't learn that. But I trust Ange and I trust Johnson to get to that point and to this be an experience that takes him there, basically.
Amen. Guys, we're going to go to predictions. This is it. This is the time. Can I just say one thing? You're going to get to know Jonny more on this channel, as a Sean and obviously Simon as well. We're bringing in. Listen, don't tell me that on Last Word on Spurs we're not looking to always invest in new amazing blood on this show. Not literally blood, can I just say, as in guests rather than actual blood from what this club's done to us. But I want to make a point that you'll notice I didn't get to Jonny talk about the drop off because he's probably still trying to recover from Coventry away. So I could talk to Jonny about the drop off from there. He was still recovering after that night I spoke to him. Let's start with John. And work our way around. Jonny, you'll be back there on Sunday in the Dragon's Den of the place that is the Spurs Stadium. Gut feeling, result-wise?
I feel like I've got an inbuilt Kevlar vest now. I survived Coventry. I've survived Brighton. I somehow came out of Palace, but I've got a new spring in my step. Obviously, the injuries are a bit of a killer. I'm going to go for a Desmond. I'm going to go for a 2-2. I'm going to go for a 2-2. I'm desperate for us to win this game, and I would have put us down for a win. But I think with the injuries, I'm not sure who's going to play now. If Romero plays and he's playing with Dragusin, I think we got much better chance. But let's see. I'm going to go for a 2-2.
Okay. Jonny, thank you so much. We're going to see you back on here very, very soon. Pleasure is all ours for certain. Shawnee, they've been going mad for you in the comments. They've been going ballistic for your return. They can't wait to see Bugsy. They can't wait to see you doing what you love doing and what we love seeing you do. They can't wait to see that amazing field behind you, which I can't afford to get that background of where I'm from, unfortunately, based in the rural of North London these days. And Shawnee's in the lovely forest wherever he goes. God, to only dream of being somewhere like that and having a break. Shawnee, what we're going to go for result-wise, and tell the people where they can find you when that time will be, fingers crossed, very, very soon.
Yeah, I'll reverse engineer it. Ricky, first and foremost, mate, I've just got to say, not only, when we speak on the phone, it's just one compliment, like return.
I know, bless you.
I'm
thinking of dropping the wife and remarrying you, Sean, I think, if I'm going to be honest with you.
You know, I'm open to it, mate. I'm open to it.
Bless your heart.
Ricky, you're a sensational host, but I've never complimented you already. You've always got the picture ready to go on the screen. Amazing. Wherever the conversation.
That's my wife bringing it in the background. That's not me.
Oh my God!
Whoever's doing it, the compliments to the chef. Impressed. It is the preparation.
I said Nunes, and Nunes appeared. That was crazy.
It's unbelievable how prepared you are with every possible conversation point.
Oh, listen,
sensational stuff. But yeah, listen. Thanks so much for having me. Thanks to the comment section, you guys. I love you all. You know, I'm hoping to be back tomorrow. I'm hoping to take the dog out, and I'll get the video up as soon as I can. So yeah, tomorrow should be my return. That's the intention. Jonny, always a pleasure, mate. I'll be calling you and devil's advocate. And Simon, sensational, mate. Love you to pieces. Love to work with you more and more. And my prediction for the game is it's going to be a difficult one. I certainly see us conceding, and I think it's going to be a tough one. However, I do think we've got enough about us. I do think that our form against Villa is good, and I think that if the fans bring the same energy as they did on Wednesday, then I'm going to see us nick it 3-2. It's going to be a belter. One
It's
of
going
the
to
best
be a
games.
cracker.
It's going to be a good game. It's going
Going to be a cracker. 3-2 there. Simon, we're going to close with you. Like you know, my friend, love having you on this show. Loving the vibes you always bring on here. Keeping us in our seats, calm, collected, measured. Are we really Spurs fans?
I mean, if I ever form a hip hop band, you will be my hype man. Oh my god!
Oh God! I tell you what,
Oh,
I feel like
Simon,
I feel like I'm a roadie these days. I don't sleep enough. I feel like I'm a roadie. I never sleep. All I'm missing is the groupies.
I mean, I'd love to be married to you. I mean, your wife must have the best life. You just going around telling her,
I'm gonna play this. I'm gonna play this clip to her back all night long after that. Simon, don't you worry. This will be on replay. This will be on replay.
So on the result, I think Jonny took my prediction, so I'm gonna have to pivot, and then Sean took my other prediction.
You can double up. You can double up.
Double up.
That's not fun.
He ain't that
You know,
kind
I'm
of
here for
guy.
listening.
He wants to be individual. Come on, Simon.
So we know both teams. We know Aston Villa has actually conceded more goals than us since Ange was appointed coach. Believe it or not, Arteta, this genius, has conceded as many goals as this naive coach Ange. So we know both teams will concede. So we got 1-1, and then I think we'll nick a second one, and then it's going to be a repeat of City. It's going to be we concede first, then we take one back. Second half, and that second goal, XG 1.5 for us. 2.5.
He's predicting the XG.
This is what
hang on, let me make a note. I'm going to get this on.
I did say though, Simon. I know someone was listening on one of my previous shows. I said when we get to a point on shows when we are predicting corner count XG, I think I'm mentally done. I think I'm mentally done. After 8-9 years of this, I bet it gets to the point of predictions. I think that would kill me off. But I appreciate Simon's measured and unbelievable articulate views to go this far deep. We appreciate it, and our viewers and listeners, I can tell you, Simon definitely appreciate it.
Simon, will it be windy? Have you got a win prediction?
Yeah.
I love that.
All right.
I think it's 11.6 miles per second.
And how long will the halftime queue be for a beer? Because that's what I worry about. Should I go early or should I come back late? You know, which way around will it be?
Definitely go.
I mean, I watched the games on the telly, so I can only tell you 7 commercials. That's how far I can go.
Guys, I gotta say a massive thank you. What an unbelievable show. What unbelievable vibes, like I say, from Last One on Spurs. The wonderful Simon Yemane, the brilliant Jonny over at the Spurs Talk Show. And look, telling it as it is, straight to the point. Jonny H, guys, listen, thank you so much for your support for Last One on Spurs. We'll be back with you after Sunday, where fingers crossed we are reviewing Spurs. Back-to-back wins in a week. Carrying on the good vibes from the wonderful guests, from you amazing viewers and listeners. Guys, we've been the Last Word on Spurs. Please keep safe, keep well. And as always, come on, you